Welcome to our debate on transgenderism is in rapid decline among young Americans. Here's the background. A recent report suggests a significant downturn in the prevalence of transgenderism among young Americans. The author of this claim posits that this observed decline indicates that transgenderism may have functioned as a social contagion. This assertion is based on findings previously published by the author several weeks prior, which drew data from 6 waves of the extensive annual survey conducted by the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE. The FIRE survey is a large-scale data collection effort focused on undergraduate students, gathering insights into various aspects of student life and identity. The current commentary interprets trends within this substantial dataset as evidence of a shift in how young Americans identify or express transgenderism, emphasizing the social contagion hypothesis as a potential explanation for the reported decline within this demographic. Question 1. Should public and private institutions re-evaluate funding allocations for gender-affirming healthcare, educational initiatives, and mental health services for youth, based on the reported decline in transgenderism and the social contagion hypothesis?
Absolutely. If the data indicates a decline in transgenderism driven by social contagion, it is high time public and private institutions re-evaluated their funding allocations. Adherence to free market principles dictates that scarce resources be directed towards genuine, enduring demand, not transient social phenomena or fads. Taxpayers and private donors should not be expected to subsidize what appears to be a fleeting trend. Emphasizing individual responsibility for personal choices rather than collective obligation for speculative social experiments.
Absolutely not. To even consider re-evaluating vital support based on a deeply flawed social contagion hypothesis echoes the darkest chapters of history, where marginalized identities were pathologized and denied their fundamental human rights. Our unwavering commitment to gender-affirming healthcare, inclusive education, and mental health services for youth is a matter of dignity and justice, not subject to shifting trends or fear-mongering narratives designed to erase vulnerable populations. Instead of questioning support, we must strengthen these lifelines, ensuring every young person can thrive authentically, free from the historical injustices of discrimination and medical gatekeeping. Their well-being and right to exist are non-negotiable civil rights.
While recent commentary citing FIRE survey data suggests a potential decline in self-reported transgender identity among young Americans, linking it to a social contagion hypothesis, such interpretations require cautious scrutiny. Major medical and psychological associations, including the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Medical Association, do not endorse the social contagion model for gender identity, emphasizing instead the complex and multifaceted nature of identity formation. Therefore, any re-evaluation of funding for gender-affirming healthcare, educational initiatives, or mental health services for youth should prioritize established medical guidelines, evidence-based practices, and the demonstrated needs of transgender individuals, rather than speculative hypotheses or survey fluctuations within a specific demographic. Continued support for services guided by expert consensus ensures comprehensive care for all young people navigating gender identity.
Question 2. Does framing gender identity as a social contagion, particularly when reporting a decline in its prevalence among youth, pose an ethical risk to the autonomy, validation, and social acceptance of transgender individuals, potentially fostering discrimination or undermining established medical and psychological frameworks for gender identity.
The notion that examining social trends through a social contagion lens poses an ethical risk fundamentally misunderstands the marketplace of ideas. Free individuals are sovereign over their own identities and choices, capable of discerning truth without requiring paternalistic safeguards against challenging hypotheses. To suggest that exploring alternative explanations somehow fosters discrimination is a tactic to suppress legitimate inquiry, rather than an earnest concern for personal well-being. Robust medical and psychological frameworks should withstand rigorous, open debate, not crumble at the presentation of data or dissenting interpretations.
Absolutely. Framing gender identity as a social contagion is a profoundly dangerous narrative that strips away the fundamental autonomy and validation of transgender individuals, particularly our vulnerable youth. This rhetoric cruelly dismisses deeply held identities as fleeting trends, fostering an environment ripe for discrimination and actively undermining established medical and psychological frameworks that affirm gender diversity. Such claims dangerously echo historical injustices where marginalized identities, from homosexuality to racial difference, were pathologized to deny civil rights and social acceptance, threatening to roll back the hard-won dignity and self-determination of our transgender siblings.
Framing gender identity as a social contagion, especially when interpreting survey data on prevalence among youth, poses significant ethical risks by potentially undermining the autonomy and internal validation of an individual's self-identification. This perspective can imply that gender identity is an externally influenced trend rather than a deeply personal experience, diminishing genuine self-determination and fostering social stigma. Such a narrative risks fostering discrimination and reducing social acceptance by delegitimizing transgender identities as transient phenomena. Moreover, this social contagion hypothesis directly conflicts with established medical and psychological frameworks, including those from organizations like the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, WPATH, and major psychiatric associations, which recognize gender identity as a complex, often innate aspect of self, supported by extensive research and clinical practice.
Question 3. What are the long-term societal consequences for both individual well-being and the broader understanding of gender if the social contagion hypothesis becomes a widely accepted explanation for changes in gender identity prevalence among young Americans, potentially impacting future healthcare access, legal protections, and the social integration of gender-diverse individuals?
Should the social contagion hypothesis gain traction, the long-term consequence will be a much-needed reassertion of personal responsibility and individual self-determination over manufactured group identities. Healthcare access and legal protections would, quite rightly, cease to be dictated by transient social trends, freeing up market resources from what are essentially lifestyle choices. This shift would fundamentally recalibrate our understanding of gender away from fluid social constructs towards a more grounded reality, encouraging genuine individuality rather than adherence to performative groupthink. Ultimately, a society that values robust self-reliance benefits by disincentivizing costly, elaborate systems built around fleeting fads.
To embrace the social contagion hypothesis is to invite a chilling regression, echoing the historical injustices where LGBTQ+ identities were pathologized. deemed a choice, and subjected to conversion, to deny their very existence. This harmful narrative would dismantle crucial healthcare access and hard-won legal protections, condemning countless young trans individuals to a future rife with shame, denial, and profound alienation from their authentic selves. We must vehemently reject such a dangerous framework that seeks to erase the beautiful spectrum of gender diversity through fear and misinformation, rather than fostering a society of radical empathy, unconditional acceptance, and the fundamental right to self-determination for all.
Should the social contagion hypothesis gain widespread acceptance, it risks profoundly undermining the well-being of gender-diverse individuals by invalidating their identities and fostering increased societal discrimination, potentially limiting access to essential gender-affirming healthcare. This could lead to a rollback of legal protections and hinder social integration, basing policy on a contested explanation rather than comprehensive understanding. While some interpretations of surveys like the FIRE data posit social influence, major medical and psychological bodies, including the American Medical Association and the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, WPATH, generally do not endorse social contagion as the primary driver of gender identity, emphasizing complex, multifactorial origins. Ultimately, a broad societal acceptance of this hypothesis risks a less nuanced and inclusive understanding of gender, potentially impeding progressive social development and individual flourishing.
Thank you for listening to this debate.